Hello, today we're doing lesson 7.1. We've started multiplying fractions and this is our first lesson. Today our job is to find part of a group, and we are going to do that with our counters, our red and yellow counters. So our question today that we need to unlock is Maya collects stamps. She has 20 stamps in her collection. 4/5 of her stamps have been canceled. That means it went to the post office and they run it through that machine. If you look at the mail, there's usually an ink mark over the stamp, so you can't use it again. So 4/5 have been canceled. How many of the stamps in Maya's collection have been canceled? Since you want to find 4/5 of the stamps, you should arrange the counter in blank equal groups. How many groups are there?
5.
5. So you should make your 20 counters into 5 equal groups. So count out 20 counters. And I think one of the easiest ways to do this is to start putting them into 5 groups. So you would have 5 of them spread out on your board like this, or on the table in front of you, so that you have 5 groups. And then you're going to give another one to each group. And when I get done giving 2 to each group of 5, how many counters will I have? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Then I would give another one. That would be 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, gotta keep going, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. So if we arrange our counters into 5 equal groups, how many counters are in each of our groups? How many are in each box?
4.
4. So each group represents blank of the stamps. How many groups did we have?
5.
If I just have one group, that represents 1/5 of the stamps. How many groups did you circle? They wanted us to do 4/5, right? We circled 4 groups. How many counters did you circle? What's 4 times 4? 16.
No.
So 4/5 of 20 is 16. 4/5 times 20 is 16. So blank of the stamps have been canceled. 16. Let's look at this part. When I have 4/5 times 20, what am I going to actually multiply here? What is the whole number 20 written as a fraction? What would be our numerator? What would be our denominator?
20/20.
Now, if I did 20/20,
5/5.
if I did 20/20, couldn't I divide each of those by 20? So I get 1/1 or 1. So I'm not going to get 20 there. 5/5. If I did 5/5, I can divide each of those by 5. I'm going to get 1/1 or 1. Do you think we're going to use 20 in part of our fraction? Yes. Okay. Do you think it's going to be the numerator or the denominator?
20/1.
20/1. Camry, why did you say, whoops, Why did you say 20 over 1?
Because 1 over 1 is 1, so 20 over 1 would be 20.
Right. Remember, how many 1s are there in 20? 20. And I told you before that when you have a fraction, this fraction bar line can really mean divide, right? If I had 12 thirds, what would I simplify that to?
What? 1 over...
If I had 12
and
thirds, what would I simplify that to? How many 3's in 12? 4. So essentially, I took 12 and divided it by 3. Or I took my numerator and I divided it by my denominator to get my whole number. Okay? So if I take my numerator and divide it by my denominator, my numerator of 20, divide it by my denominator of 1, I'm going to get 20. So when we're multiplying a fraction times a whole number, that whole number goes up and is our numerator. And what are we always going to put for our denominator?
1.
1. So this would look something like this. This part of it right here would be 4/5 times 20. We would make that our numerator, put it over 1. What is 4 times 20?
80.
80. And what is 5 times 1?
5.
So how many 5's in 80? Well, we can divide that, right? 80 divided by 5, it goes in there once. We have 3 left. We bring down our 0. How many 5's in 30?
16.
16. There you go. That's how they got that 16. So when we're multiplying by a fraction by a whole number, the whole number becomes a
1.
numerator. Our denominator is 1. Now we're going to have you draw an array. Let's see what our problem is. Max's stamp collection has stamps from different countries. He has 12 stamps from Canada. Of those 12, 2/3 of them have pictures of Queen Elizabeth II. How many stamps have the Queen on them? So he has 12 stamps and 2/3 of them. Draw an array to represent the 12 stamps by drawing an X for each stamp. Since you want to find 2/3 of the stamps, your array should show how many rows should my array have? 3, because we want to do it into 3 groups. Okay, so we have 12 and we want 3 groups. So they said to draw X's. There should be a spot on your page to do this. So here's my 3 groups. I have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, there's my 12 stamps in 3 groups. Can you see that? Here's a group, here's a group, here's a group. Circle blank of the 3 rows. How many of the rows are we going to circle? 2, because they want to know what 2 of the 3 is. Then count the number of X's in your circle. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to circle 2 of my rows. I have 4 and 4, so that is how many? 8. There are 8 X's circled. Complete the number sentence. 2/3 of 12 is 8. Or 2/3 times 12 is 8. So there are 8 stamps with the 8 stamps with the picture of Queen Elizabeth. Remember, when we see the word of, what is that signaling us to do? Multiply. Okay, so the question was asked, how would we do this using multiplication? Well, on the previous one, I told you that you would take that whole number and put it as a numerator and put 1 as your denominator, because there are 12 ones in 12. And if I multiply 2/3 times 12 over 1, or 12, 2 times 12 is 24, and 3 times 1 is 3, and then I would divide 24 by 3 to get 8. Okay, this is in the middle of page 292. It says on your math board, we just used our desk, use counters to find 4/6 of 12. Explain why the answer is the same as when you found 2/3 of 12. Okay, so if I find 4/6 of 12, that means I would put my 12 x's into 6 groups, okay? And so by the time I did my 6 groups, I would only have 2 in each of my groups. And if I want 4 of those groups, how many is that? 2, 4, 6, 8. And the reason that comes out the same is because 2/3 and 4/6 are what kind of fractions? Equivalent fractions. Okay, so since 2/3 and 4/6 are equivalent fractions, the same number of counters are circled when I circle 4 out of 6 groups as when I circle 2 out of 3 groups. So if I did my 3 groups, and I circled 2 of those groups, I would have, that would equal 8. And this also equals 8. So this is 4/6 of 12, and this is 2/3 of 12. Okay, now we're moving on to the try this at the bottom of page 292. We still have Max and his stamp collection. It says draw an array that represents 12 stamps by drawing an X for each stamp. Susan has 16 stamps. In her collection, 3/4 of the stamps are from the United States. How many of her stamps are from the United States? And how many are not? So, this tells us how many stamps we need to draw, right? And this tells us what? The number of
stamps. Total.
Rows. Rows or groups. In this case, in an array, a row would be a group. So we're going to have 4 rows of stamps. 1, 2, 3, 4. And how many stamps do we need all together?
18.
Not 18, but 16.
16.
So
4 rows each.
there's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 stamps. So you should have an array that is 4 rows by 4 columns. Okay? So blank us. Okay, so how many of these rows are we going to circle? 3.
Well,
Okay, if we have 4, 8, 12. So 12 of Susan's stamps are from the United States, and how many are not? How many did we not circle? 4. And if we add 12 and 4, we get our whole of 16. Now, if we were going to multiply this, like we've been doing, 3/4 times 16, we would put our whole number over 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm going to show you a shortcut. Are you ready? If you look at your numbers that are opposite each other here, Do 3 and 1 have any factors in common or anything in common? Can we make
No.
those less in any way?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody's eyes up here. Your eyes up here. How about 4 and